Welcome everyone to this workshop about data management for CMT. My name is Marco van der Linden. I represent PhD Nederland from the Netherlands. I'm also one of the founding members of the ECMTA, and at this time I'm one of the board members of the ECMTA. In this workshop, we are going to discuss the necessity of the CMT patient registry for research purposes. How can we provide for the most easiest and most cost-effective access for all CMT researchers to get relevant data. In the Netherlands and other European countries, we have registries from patient associations or hospitals to recruit people for research. In some countries, there are CMT-based patient registry. These are organized according to different individual criteria and standards. So the usefulness is limited. And the goal of this workshop is to determine the necessity for qualitative data to make available for researchers. We also want to create proposals on how to have a current system of compatible registries that can produce all essential data. I would like to give the floor to Alessandra for the introduce herself and the other presenters.
Okay, thank you very much, Marco, for the kind introduction. So I think you know who I am, maybe. So I'm Alessandra Bolino, no. I'm a professor at University Vita Salute San Raffaele in Milan, and I work in San Raffaele Hospital in Milan, obviously. So we have three speakers of this workshop. So the first is Jean-Christophe Antoine, who is late apparently. So we can, yes. So we can then start with the second, who is Simone Thiele, and then we will have Teresina Evangelista. So let me introduce first Simone Thiele, who is a physician and responsible for the neuromuscular patient registries at the Friedrich Bauer Institute in Munich, in Germany. So thank you very much for being here. And I try to switch. Sorry. So is oops. They said everything was here, but apparently yes. Okay. Is this one? Okay. Fantastic.
Yes.
So you can change here. You can use this computer. Okay. Okay. Yes. And this is the pointer. Yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Alessandra, thank you very much for the kind introduction. Registries are part of my work since 2007. The diagram on the left side shows the implementation of an extended dataset for the SMA registry as part of TreatNMD. It shows that there are different types of registries European-wide working together. The data in registries can be entered by patients themselves, by the physician, or by a combination of the two. Clinician-reported registries dominate the network, followed by dual-reported registries. And clinician-reported registries means higher data quality in the long term. But patient-reporting registries are maybe less reliable in terms of data quality, but generally more complete and cost-effective, since the patient has the highest interest in filling in his data and has to update his data only, while clinicians have to do a lot. If patient data is supplemented with clinically verified data, the advantages of both registry types can be combined. Back to 2007 and about TreatNMD. TreatNMD is a new muscular network established in January 2007 as part of an EU project. It provides an infrastructure to ensure that new therapies reach patients timely. The TreatNMD network has worked to develop tools for trial readiness in a number of areas, as you can see, and is also collaborating on additional research project fields. One of the key treatment infrastructure built up are patient registries for DMD and SMA. You can see on the right side, it's a little small, but 5 national registries for DMD and SMA were originally planned. Today, Duchenne remains as the most reported dataset within the network, with 30,680 patients recorded by 41 registries. On this slide, the most important points you can see on the left side. For easy utilization and to respond to the need for regular updating, the core dataset of mandatory data has to be generated, as has been done in TreatMD. Clinical information needs to be captured in a standardized way. You can see the developments of the platform here, starting with DMD and SMA, currently for LGMD. From the different versions, you can see how each platform has evolved. It's very important to visualize the purpose of the registry. What is it intended to be used for, and what deliverables are expected? Mostly, the registry is built for clinical trial recruitment, but there are some important other things we can use them. This is an example form of the dataset within the SMA patient registry. Important features such as validation and plausibility checks are not implemented. This example is mainly intended as a baseline form. Follow-up form may need modifications to incorporate previously collected data. And on the right side, you could see a project in the last 4 years, co-financed by pharmacy. An extended data set for SMA has been developed and already implemented in many registries. The contents of this project are presented on the homepage you see above. More than 35 registries worldwide collaborated. Due to European data protections, registries aim for an anonymized aggregated dataset that can be used for the various purposes. To support data collection, TreatMD has developed an IT platform that can be used by affiliated registries, the Global Registry Platform. It is a secure and user-friendly data reporting platform which has been set up in August 2022. GRP has an infinite capacity in supporting the registry for the data collection at free of charge. Limitation: this platform is only available in English so far. So how we get a common anonymized aggregated data set? The data of registry A, B, and Z on the left side are entered into the global registry platform and transmitted to the central warehouse as pseudonymized records. There's also the possibility for registries D, E, and F using their own registry platform to transfer their pseudonymized data to the central warehouse. In addition to this system, there's the option of a federated database system you can see on the right. Federated database system is a form of integration of multiple data sources in which they themselves remain unchanged. The data of the existing registries X, Y, Z must first be processed in such a way that they correspond to the harmonized common data set. The anonymized data from the two platforms can then be statistically analyzed. And at the end, an aggregated dataset is available, hopefully. Our center in Munich is part of TreatNMD. With the experience gained from establishing the patient registries for DMD and SMA, we established the German CMT registry in Munich in 2013, 10 years ago. Currently, more than 2,000 DMT patients are registered. On the right side, you can see our registry flyer. And this is the workflow in our registry. Patients are recruited in close collaboration with neuromuscular specialists and patients' organizations. And the patient enters the data by him herself first. Enter data is verified by the curator and clinician based on a copy of the genetic report that is required for each patient. Data is saved on a secure local server. No identifying data is ever forwarded to third parties. In case of inquiries for clinical trials, registered patients are informed by us and decide themselves if they wish to participate. For 55% of the registry participants, the genetic report is available today. As expected, the most frequent diagnosis is CMT1A. We inform the participants in newsletters about research results and approval for new treatments, and remind them to complete and review the data once a year. A huge part of registry work, which needs a lot of time and manpower, is communication and follow-up with patients to encourage them to update their data. And as you can see on the right side, our registry includes already European participants. In the middle, you can see the front-end appearance of the CMT registry on our homepage. Our registry contains both patient and professional report. We acquire the diagnosis as well, disability devices, surgery, family history, and so on. The clinician and or the curator complete the data, such as the diagnosis, using the copy of the human genetic report. And also some outcome measures are included. This is from the homepage of TreatNMD. TreatNMD has also started to bring the CMT community together. There are some national patient registries for neuromuscular diseases on the right side, which are also suitable for patients with hereditary neuropathies. Additionally, there are strong nonprofit organizations and research networks, as you know. In Germany, with funding from the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research, CMTnet on the right side was able to start its work in 2016, while the nationwide CMT registry already existed since 2013. This is important because a registry can support something only after 2 years, after some years. It takes some time to get the data in. Here. Some important points. If you are thinking about setting up a registry in your country, please make sure that there is not already a registry with the same purpose. It's double effort and it does not make sense. And the collection of an agreed dataset ensures a coordinated approach to clinical trial readiness. You remember the slide with the 5 important points. And my last slide for today. In rare diseases, registries may play an important role in the therapy development pathway. The natural history of the disease can be observed, important prognostic factors, and also subgroups of patients with particularly mild or severe disease progression can be identified. Rare or delayed treatment complications can be timely detected. Registry can help to assess the impact of treatment in everyday life. And knowledge is also gained for real life patient groups represented not normally in clinical trials, such as older or severely affected patients. It's a pleasure being here today. Thank you for listening.
Can I have one question? How do you keep the data correct? Does people often send a mail to the data or log in on the data system? Because people could die. And how do you remove the patients from your list?
When I'm sending a newsletter, there are always emails doesn't exist, and
Okay.
I get the feedback
Okay.
or from the relatives of the patient. And then if there's no genetic report, we deleted the data because it doesn't make sense. If there's a genetic report and the relatives of the patients agreed, I could store it, but behind, not in front. Also, not. It's a silent data set.
Can I ask you, when you, in your very first slide about collecting data, when you said patients enter it first, it sounded like to enter it, they have to have their genetic report. How often do patients have access to their original genetic report? Because that would be unusual in the UK for them to have access to it. They might have the name of the gene and the variant, but I think it's a great idea. And perhaps we should make sure patients do, but how often do the German patients have their original genetic report that they can upload as they register?
It becomes more in the last years, but often I have to ask for the genetic report, and sometimes patients send us the clinician report where the gene is named, but not the original genetics. And I asked them and told them that they should ask their center to get it, because it's important, and we'll delete it after 10 years, I think.
So it might be an outcome from this whole meeting here that becomes a normal practice accepted that every patient is given their genetic report. I mean, that could be a very simple outcome that could change.
You already have substantial German database. Can you give us an impression how much effort this takes to keep it running in terms of, let's say, hours a week or days a week? Just an impression, magnitude.
It also depends from advertisement. If the clinicians and the neuromuscular centers give our flyer to the patient, they get access. And it also depends on the diagnosis, because we have seen that CMT patients are like to go to the registry and get in. SMA patients, not so much. It depends on and how many hours. Registry can wait, so I can do it when I have time.
Yes, but on an average, let's say in a month's time or something like we spend just a few hours or just a few days on CMT registry, or just to give a date. No, I mean, if it's one day a year, it's 1 day a year. But if it's like 2 days a month, I mean, that's a difference, no?
I check emails every day and respond. At the beginning of the registry, it was days in a month, but now maybe 2 to 3 days in a month. Every day. It's not so much. It's quite work.
Okay, thank you,
If I
Davide.
understand correctly, it's a dual record registry where the patient register himself herself, and then the visit take place afterwards on the same time, or is the visit mandatory in your center to complete the record? And the question is, when do you deliver and acquire the consent from consent. In which way? It is always an issue. Online consent, written consent, and also the other problem is the use of the registry for the future, for future studies, for the industry, and so. Question management of the consent.
The consent is given by patient during registration. So
Okay.
this is the point. The patient registered themselves, patients, and so we have the consent.
Yeah.
It takes the SMA and the DMD registry. It takes 8 years until we could use the data for any trial group. 8 years. On CMT registries, there were only 3 years. And within the CMT net, it was very good that the clinicians of the other centers also give the data into the database. Munich, Göttingen, Münster, Aachen.
I have two questions. One is, so you have fertility centers that do the clinical work and the all the scoring, somatic clinician work. Is this still happening? So do patients still go to the fertility centers, and is there capacities for the doctors to actually collect these data, which is like a very nice data set. I've seen it and I think it's very good. But I feel like obviously this is a lot of work and it's very hard to include this into a regular normal life register or whoever's going to do it. So is this still something that's happening, and how is it practically financed or done at this moment, or what's the perspective on that? First question, maybe so I don't forget it. The second question, and the global registry platform. I haven't heard about this before, and I think it's a great idea to put registries together. Is this something that still exists? Which registries participate in that, and is there a common core or minimal data set already, which is something, but as I was seeing CMT patients in Berlin, for example, saying, hey, I want to participate one day in these registries or do something that works with everyone together. So as you said, I don't do a new registry, but obviously want to participate. We need a common core data set that's maybe small enough to be feasible in a not hugely financed way, which maybe not everyone has access to. And is there something like that in place or planned? Unexpected.
The global platform is already planned.
It's planned. It's not happening yet. Okay.
Not exists. Within CMT net, the patients were had to come to the centers, to Munich and so on. And in this way, we get sufficient data. After CMT net, it's a little difficult because in Munich it works. We are here and the setting is there and we could do this. We do not have the CMT and S2 of all participants. But I thought about yesterday. I think if the center has many clinical trials, there's normally enough manpower also to do measurements of MRC or so on. But as always, you can use your time also for other things. It's not as easy as it seems to be, but it works with a little passion.
Always.
Sorry. There's a question about, I don't think there's international agreement on a global registry. I mean, you talked about the treatment D1. The INC one isn't part of that, the UK one isn't part of that, the Italian one isn't part of that. So for various reasons, people have not bought into that. So I think there is an issue that we have lots of different registries going on. You know, whether they need to be able to talk to each other, at least they need to be capturing data that is manageable is a different thing. But I think it didn't treat MD when it was set up in the CMT side for various reasons. a lot of the CMT registries didn't use it. That's historically as to why. But I think there's a huge registries not involved, probably the biggest ones in the world.
It was only an idea because I want to show.
No, I think it's great. Historically, when it was set up, the treating MD, but they did want CMT involved initially. That was the plan, and that was involved. And Teresa was probably involved, but maybe it was even before Teresa's time, but it didn't happen for CMT in the way it did for others for various reasons.
Okay. And in the future, it could not be.
Well, does it need to be treating MD? I mean, I think it doesn't. That's what I meant. Is I think it's a great idea to have some sort of global, but it just to say that at the moment.
So if I may, the global platform for treating MD, it's planned, but it's not there yet.
But
and
the GRP exists.
the
The global registry platform that can be
It's
used
not-
by.
it's not yet working, as far as I know. That's my point. And
I've told to the IT.
as far as I know, but and it's really difficult because it's based on the UK,
Yes.
and UK is no longer European,
Yes.
and legal establishment.
It's the legislative description. Come on.
No, it's no. I'm talking from experience. I'm trying to set the EuroNMD registry is trying to be set up in Europe among countries of the European Union, and you cannot imagine, or you can, the amount of legal and ethical constraints. It's been taking us more time to do all the paperwork than the actual registry that is
I understand that. But I think one of the most important questions that comes up every single time, registries, databases, etc. is what is the function? Why are we having it? What's the end point? And then, because I think if it's just, there's too many registries and databases out there for their own sake.
Yeah.
They're just there, aren't they? You know, so I think that's a very good point.
Sorry, we have a last question and then we have to move on with other speakers and then continue the discussion. Please go ahead.
What are you told about the numbers in the registry? How many children? Because in Charcot-Marie-Tooth we are talking with the parents always and give them the flyers.
I have to look at it. I could do it in the next minutes.
I make this point because we are always talking about CMT. Most of them is in adult, but there is a real number of children affected.
It's an
In
interesting point.
Europe, I'm sorry, just I'm always interested in this. So, say in the UK, most children with CMT and people interested in muscle disease like Duchenne's and SMAs because it's neuromuscular, most adults see peripheral nerve experts. So, is that the same throughout Europe? That's why.
No, I think the other way around.
think the other way
They
around.
have only not that typical symptoms at the beginning.
Yeah.
And they in
general.
the child doctors in the general.
Okay.
And they found their way to the neuromuscular centers not that early.
Yeah.
But I will give you the information after this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, we have to move on with the next speaker, Professor Jean-Christophe Antoine. From the Department of Neurology at the Hôpital Universitaire. He's a professor of neurology and the former head of the reference center for neuromuscular disease in Saint-Étienne. Okay, this is the remote control. You can, leave in and then, because there is not another entry, isn't it? There. And change manually. Okay. Take your time. I don't know if it's an extended.
So- Maybe there is only, I suggest to.
To swap. Okay, okay,
I will.
okay. You can go out and. Okay.
What you say?
So I call here the third speaker. In the meantime, that we fix. That is Teresina Evangelista, who is a neurologist and neuropathology, you know very well. Is responsible for the neuromuscular pathology unit at La Salpêtrière, and more importantly, the coordinator of the ERN new Euro NMD European Reference Network. So thank you very much. And now,
Same problem.
No, mine is already
we
there.
have to go back. So this is Marco and this is Teresina. Wait a minute. Yeah.
Yep.
Right. You are Very good indeed, better than me. It's correct.
The problem is that it's not
Not
showing anymore.
cosa è successo?
Yes.
These were not counts of the
You
population.
have no idea why.
It must have lost the.
It's like lost a connection.
Yeah, can you
What?
put
No,
No, everything is fixed. Yeah. I don't know what happened.
vado a chiamare qualcuno.
Grazie Davide. We are speaking in Italian.
We understand.
You understood?
Thank you, David.
Grazie mille.
It's a unique position. Because one of the issues with, I'd say, the teacher animals, with SMA and Duchenne's to a certain extent, is it's only now becoming obvious that the power of following up patient therapy and gene therapies of various types. And I think if it's set up with that, as you said, part of it, one of the aims, because I think it's critical aim going forward, is inevitably people will get put on treatments in different countries with slightly different rules. Yes, that's already happening. People are sneaking people in. So to every single patient on these kind of therapies, to capture that, I think will be really important, particularly if there's genotype correlations with responsive therapy. So I think it's a really unique position to capture that from the beginning because there's no treatments.
Thank you. That's one of the aims of this registry, and we hope we will get there. And as I told you, this is not yet up and running because we are stuck with the RGPD or GDPR. Sorry, I'm now mixing French and English. With GDPR, with our legal department at the hospital. So we facilitate things. We are doing like a file like this to send to the centers, and we will pilot centers first so that they can pass it through the ethics committee saying, look, this is the work that has been checked and rechecked by different lawyers, different levels. So please sign this. And this is the thing that is the most complicated. It's at the level of the common. Yes.
If I understand right, if I put the patient in from the senior registry, or can I put it on this directly?
You can put it directly in the ERN registry. So because like if you have your SMA patients, you don't need I know that you need to put your SMA patients in the smart care. But those actually, if someone wants to make a request to SMA to the smart care registry, that patient doesn't need to be in the ERN registry. So it stays in, but if you have, I don't know, a DOC7 patient that has no registry, please include it in the registry.
So basically, just trying to understand that,
That was first.
sorry.
And then Davide.
You mentioned that you'll review various different applications as people try to get access to this data. Can you tell me a little bit about how you go about selecting the committees, what these committees are supposed to consist of, what the process is supposed to look like?
So there will be a data access committee. The data access committee will be constituted by people that are, for instance, the chairs of the working groups of the ERN. And we have 11 working groups, so 11 people. If we need, it's the 5 plus the others. And there is also the people that are the core people from the registry, the teams that worked in the registry, the team from Peter Brown is going to be part of the data access committee. The same thing for the people in Freiburg. As the coordination of the ERN, we need to be there because it's our responsibility. But it will be spread across different countries in Europe because the shares of the working groups are from different countries.
And just one quick follow-up. Do you have any sense of what criteria you might be able to apply to judge whether an application is worthy of access?
I don't have all the paperwork.
Sorry, of course.
With me, but yes, there are criteria that won't be restrictive. Some of this data that is in the registry, not in the app. will be available online in the sense that how many patients, female, male, or whatever disease group. So this is data that doesn't constitute a problem. And if you want to know how many patients we have with the disease X, and you make a request, we probably don't need to go through. So there will be, it's different. But if you want to add stuff, imagine that you have a project that you want to collect data on patient, you want to collect specific data on patients with amyloidosis. We are not specifically amyloidosis, but you have your questionnaire, you have your ideas about what kind of data you want to collect. This needs to be assessed because this is work for the IT people, and it's also work for us that are managing the registry. So this is assessed, and obviously in this case, verified and validated. This will go on.
Davide?
Maybe Andrea.
Davide Andrea.
Okay. The problem is for the interactor of the data with the owner of the data, this context. Because, for instance, it would be great to make interoperable the CMT registry in Italy with the ERN registry, but the data is owned by the Associazione del Registro, Territory in Italy, and we cannot use the data.
Yes, you don't imagine that GM scope was a easy negotiation because GM scope, for instance, is owned by AFM, which is also a patient organization. But the data that is in the scope, it's not going we are not going to use the data without them knowing. It's only upon request, and each registry will establish their own ways of giving access to
so
the data.
theoretically, we can create
Yes.
and interact.
Yes.
That's
We are also
Very
trying
much.
to. There's another registry that is now that is a French registry, which is called OPAL. It's for laminopathies, and actually with another ERN, Guard Heart, we wanted to make it not to people that are responsible for OPAL and people from Guard Heart wanted to make it instead of French, because it's a very good registry and that they collect slightly. We need to make it European. Actually, we wanted to be a collaboration between ERNs and to make try to make OPAL interoperable and fair with our registry. But obviously, we gonna say this needs to have strict rules of access, and there will be strict rules of access because we cannot just go to the data that is in the OPAL and scope, whatever, and grab.
Just a clarification. So basically, this is aimed to capture the entire neuromuscular disorder.
Yeah.
Right? There's no exception, or is he? And for those where there's already a registry, you aim to somehow import the data, find the data, rather than ask. You will ask actually to re-enter the data in the separate registry. And it's the clinician who should enter the data.
Yes.
Am I right? And there was an initial funding to set it up, but there's no funding for the centers who actually entered the data.
So we have now applied for the grant for the continuation of the ERN, and there will be some funding for the centers because all the legal work they need to do. It's not a lot of money, but there will be some funding for the centers.
Approval.
Yeah.
And the other thing that is a comment I wanted to make yesterday is that particularly for these European initiatives. So there are European rules that should be followed by all the European states. I find that, going through one ethics committee which approves the study, absolutely necessary. Maybe an approval at, single member state level, fine. But at every single city, in every single country has to approve what has already been approved.
Yeah, 80 centers.
I find it a complete, so I think it's something that should be tackled at the very beginning, at the origin.
So there
At
is
least the European Union level for such a register, because that's a waste of time that puts people off more even than entering the data.
you have heard yesterday the commissioner, Stella, what's her name? Talking about something called joint action for integration, and that is one of the problems that we have as coordinators have always raised, is that it's not possible to continue to have this kind of legal barriers to share data, and not even to share data to I can, so for the consent form. So there are 2 European projects, the EJPRD and another project, ERICA, that did a lot of work helping to formulate the European, to formulate a consent form that could be adapted to each ERA, okay, and to each country. So we got that consent. It's already translated in all the EU languages. And I went, not me, but someone went to the legal people at my hospital, and there were. And this was an European, we had to change a lot of things in the consent, with the problem that now we don't have the actual translations from we have French and English, because if you don't know, in France we need always to do French and English side by side.
Yeah.
If we are working in an English setting. So these kind of things cannot exist. And the other thing is that there is a GDPR interpretation that is very country level. It's not just the problem of the GDPR in itself that is quite limiting. It's the interpretation that each country does of the GDPR and what can be done on what paper. But we all know that this exists, but it's a political problem. And
this is we heard about like dual registries, patient clinician. This is a clinician driven registry. Yeah. There's no patient input in this registry so far. There's a plan for it.
So we have, but the patient's input in the registry will be for the PROMs, for the patient reported outcome measures, for PRAMs. And we hope that we will probably, as I said, we have worked very closely with patient organizations, and I know that the foundation has built an application for patients to input their own data in the Duchenne data platform. So we are trying, we will work with them to try to develop an app that will allow patients to input their own data into the registry, but most in terms of questionnaires, because this is also a request of the patient to be able to input. And the other thing is that if the patient's organizations or a patient group needs to wants to do a research work with the data that is in the registry, they are as welcome as the clinicians or other researchers. So it's to be used by everyone. And definitely, I think that the aim of the registry is to be used by everybody. Yes.
I don't know how many more questions we have time.
I don't know if that would be our message.
Okay, there was a very last question. Yes. Sorry, but
besides funding, data ownership, and the board members of such a registry are always important topics in most points of discussion. Do you think of a rotating board?
It could be one of the hypotheses, and that's a very good suggestion. Actually, thank you for that concern. It's says in my mind.
Very last.
Like using integrated data from large coming from different sites, then you get requests something with is there like what kind of request you get? Like but then you can say, okay, we got a request from that side and they want to do this, and to have a list is actually sometimes very important or interesting that you say, okay, people are doing this. I think as an example, what can be done.
That's the aim. So the registry has a website of its own. Once we have data and requests, all this will be, all the projects need to be announced.
Requests and what
And
can
yeah.
happen.
Yes,
And the people
yes,
involved.
that,
And,
that will
yeah.
be, that is one of the things that we want.
And then you probably can see who will get the credit or who's the leader from the.
And obviously, for instance, I cannot see the data from Sharam's center. Sharam cannot see my data unless we request.
Okay.
So it's interesting to see the companies, to see who's interested in pharma. I think that's interesting to track that.
Yeah, you have to track something.
We usually track who's interested in what they're interested in.
I cannot, so I cannot deny that for the sustainability of the registry. We need to interact with, we will need to interact with pharma, otherwise we cannot be sustainable. But the interact with pharma doesn't mean that they are going to have access, indiscriminate access to it. As because we are also, we don't have the European Commission, it's quite strict.
Okay, thank you, Teresina. Thank you very much. So please, Jean-Christophe. So we will have the last speaker, then the rapporteur, Andrea Cortese from UCL London and University of Pavia. And then I think we can close the session with another quick discussion. Thank you very much, Jean.
I will shorten my presentation. First, I am not a specialist of Charcot-Marie-Tooth, but more particularly involved in a project of registry in France concerning peripheral neuropathy as a whole, and I think it is very important to have a tool which may be able to accommodate any kind of peripheral neuropathy more than CMT, at least because of effort which need to construct the registry and the cost. I think that we have probably to fix the different goals we have when constructing a registry. Some of them are relatively easy and shared by everybody, such as the phenotype description of a rare mutation, for example, or to be able to describe the natural history of the disease. But I think it's also the registry may be a very important tool to identify new biomarkers to be able to describe, predict the disease evolution and the answer to treatment. So we will need to see what are the consequences of such a goal, and then of course to identify patients eligible to treatment. But in the corresponding question are which level of detail should be recorded in the database. And if you want, for example, to identify biomarkers which are sensitive to the disease evolution, you need to record a lot of details of the disease. And the same question is, how long do we need to follow the patient? Which means that the financial support be maintained over several years. You cannot embark in a project for which you have only money for 1 year. And this is a very important concern, I think. What are the best scale? And of course, depending on the cell you enter in the registry will depend your ability to identify biomarkers sensitive to the disease evolution. And the number of patients also to enter in the registry is very important, because if you want, for example, to be sensitive to the evolution of a disease which is slowly progressive as CMT, you need to incorporate in the registry many patients. And then what are the best tools to be used? Here I want to speak the state of art in France and what is our ongoing project. First, in France, the French Ministry of Health has developed since 10 years a registry which is devoted to all rare disease followed in reference center. And so far, For example, we have more than 30,000 patients with neuromuscular disease recorded in this registry, and among them, probably more than 10,000 patients with Charcot-Marie-Tooth. The diagnosis is made according to the orphanet nomenclature. This registry uses HPO codes for describing the clinical presentation of the patient, and the SGNC nomenclature for gene mutation. And the network of reference center in France for neuromuscular disease has developed recently a specific form for the clinical symptoms of neuromuscular disease, one for myopathy, another one for peripheral neuropathy. But the main problem with this registry is that it does not allow the fine evaluation of the evolution of patients. It does not also allow their follow-up. And it is the reason why we decided some years ago to build a registry for peripheral neuropathies as a whole. It was initiated by the Francophone Society for Peripheral Neuropathies with the help of a scientific board. And I participated to this board. And now the registry is held by the French network of reference center for neuromuscular disease. And of course, it is a registry which is designed to accommodate any form of peripheral neuropathy. So it is a web application built with open source data, which is accessible from any computers in a hospital and outside the hospital. The data are collected in national in a server, which is of course an authorized one with two sectors in this server. The first one where nominal data are collected and which is only accessible to the clinician who follows the patients. So you know exactly what this patient have been recorded in the registry, and then for research purpose, nominal data are transferred to another sector in an anonymized form. Of course, this application follows the GDPR regulation, in France, the CNIL, and it is compatible with the FAIR criteria, but this needs to be validated. We collect a large amount of data concerning the clinical symptoms, the diagnosis, and we use the orphanet thesaurus, but as you know, this is not a perfect one, and we have adapted this thesaurus for neuropathies in this case. We collect also many data concerning metabolic, immunological, and infectious abnormalities. For concerning genes, we use the SGNC nomenclature. We record the method used for the identification of the mutation. Of course, the nature of the mutation, its estimated pathogenicity when it is a variant, and the transmission of the disease. But we also collect information on treatment, and we can enter any kind of treatment that are validated, MRI, neuropathology, and electrophysiology. So, for example, here are the clinical data. You may generate a diagram summarizing the sensory abnormalities of the patient, motor deficits, but we also record symptoms of other organs such as skeleton, respiratory function, central nervous system, eye, audition, and of course, all of this is very important for CMT. We have so far at least 15 scale and score that we can use as we want for the follow-up of the patient, including the CMT-NS2 score. And for the NMG, for the moment, it is a summarized result of the NMG, but we can also enter, we can also enter specific values for motor and sensory nerve. And we aim at, I hope in the next future, be able to automatically retry the NMG value of the patient in the database. At the end, we can generate customized diagram for the follow-up of the patient. For example, here you have in the law, the treatment of the patient, and different scales for the sensory, motor, and the biomarker level. Of course, this is very interesting for the clinician who follow a given patient to manage it and its treatment. And I think it is important for the clinician to have an interest in the use of the registry for his own work every day if we want to implement registry for scientific reasons. Data can be extracted by through a PDF or an Excel sheet, and we can perform any queries using Boolean tools with any combination of any items that have been entered in the registry. And you can do that from your own computer, and of course for a general project at the level of France. For the moment, the registry is available in 5 centers, and we expect to intend it to 15 centers about the next month. And we will function as by call for project on specific disease. And so far, we have decided that CIDP, sensory neuropathy, and CMT will be the 3 first research projects will be developed within this registry. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Always the dream to have all the data in and the report is available. The question is how much of effort do you need to put into in the data entry? And is there a system, which is another dream, that automatically animates the registry from the medical record? And the informed consent, do you ask for consent?
First, no, the second point. I think we have to think to be able to automatically pick up the information in the patient file. And for this, tools such artificial intelligence will certainly help us, and we have to think about that.
So just a comment, we have a mainstream database where now we have the beginning, the tools, we have the company and so on to do that at the beginning. So for the moment, we have very standardized hospital reports and so on, and we are now testing to see if this is really efficient or not. And after that, if it works, we are going to.
For the moment, I use this registry in my everyday practice. When I see a patient, I go and I enter the data. When you see a patient for the first time, it takes about 15 minutes to enter the data, and then 5 minutes, 10 minutes at each visit. But of course, if you have to collect retrospective data, it takes many times, and you need funds to pay for a clinical assistant and so on. It is the same problem everywhere.
Consent?
The consent patient, yes, they have to see the patient.
So I think I really like it, and I know you've had some stuff out there already, it's really good. And I think though, in the long term, and it's what Teresa was saying, I mean, I actually think, yes, we have to engage with pharma, but we can't depend on pharma.
Yes.
So I think, it's a bit what we're saying. I think it's difficult, but there's no question that I would say in 15 years' time, I would like it to be all based on our electronic databases and automatically done. So we've also a project in at the moment, a grant, to try to see, can you capture it from the electronic database? The problem is throughout Europe, we don't have the same electronic databases. There's Epic in some hospitals, there's other ones. And, the ideal thing is in the end that, it would come in whatever form from the electronic database, because that's true sustainability. Because otherwise, that's quite a lot of time. I can understand, but I like your carrot of being able to use in your clinical practice, those nice diagrams, what's happening with the impact, because that has to get clinicians. But I think in individual smaller hospitals, it's harder and harder to get people for the time. But I think one of the things sustainability has to be, as people develop electronic records, is governments agreeing to make it sustainable and integrated. And that will not happen in the short term. But I really like that. I like it a lot.
I was just going to say that that's also one of the projects in the future transaction. There's one part that is exactly trying to extract the data from whatever technical aspect. I'm not a technical person. To extract pilots, extract data from records to the ERN registry. So that's something. This will allow also from the ERN point of view, the integration of the ERN in the national health system. Otherwise, we won't be sustainable.
But I think this needs to prove to be efficacious, because I have some suspicion, because we do not use the same language. Some people will focus on one point and not on the others, which will not be noted. So.
No, I agree, but I'm still thinking about the future.
And
So
then,
in 50 years' time, what will people be looking at?
but
They won't be looking at thousands of registries, I hope. It's not that- I don't know what it will look like, but we have to imagine what it could look like, because otherwise, it'll, but I mean, AI, we all talk about AI as this thing, but it is pretty good already at doing things, there's physical things that we do that have been taken from 20 minutes to 20 seconds. So, I'm not technical, but I'm amazed at that. So there is stuff that can work in the long term.
But I think there will also be a lot of problem of ethical and regulation problem.
Yeah, and you're
to
great.
have the authorization to use EA to do the
Then I
job.
agree.
So it is not for tomorrow.
Very quickly, I think that what is time consuming is not entering, it's doing the things. I mean, doing the CMTNs and so on. And I think that I think that it's better to focus on not all of the centers, but on reference centers, and that's why we are going to focus on the self center. If you have 1,000 patients, very good. If you don't have 4,000 patients, I don't think that it's changed really. So it's better to focus on reference centers that by networking and so on. And what is important is what items should be into that this is the.
So it looks like a very nice national plan. So we have 5 centers now, we going to 15 centers. But are there any, do they participate voluntarily, like
Yes,
what
yes,
we
we
are, or
Nobody else cares.
Are there incentives to join the plan that come from say government or whatever it is? I mean, how are the 15 centers chosen?
They are among the reference centers which are labeled by the French Ministry of Health for neuromuscular disease. But they enter, of course, if they are willing to. It is not mandatory. What is mandatory is to fill in the national registry for all rare disease.
For everyone.
For everyone. For any patient, it is mandatory.
As a recognized
Your level depends on this.
So this is the aim to participate in studies, to publish together, and so on, to have to work with to network. Centers need to that because the French center are receive money from the government.
Okay, and that's part of the job then.
Should be out of the job. They need publication.
Your level depends on the fact you fill in the register incentive.
Yeah, the sure project is for. Yeah, we hope that.
Sorry, very last question.
Very last question. I wanted to come back. Obviously, I'm excited about AI. I work on it. And one question that I have for you is that if we will be moving towards automating the process of entering the data into these databases. There's no question about it. I think a big question is who does that, and what implications does that have? Because if you're using a company, now you have the question of, well, now this data goes to this company first in order to be processed. Is that okay?
No.
So I think we need to think about developing these kinds of systems either as a healthcare space within Europe, so that is distributed from the government or from the European Union level, or maybe even as a disease community ourselves.
So it's already been done with individual.
The company chosen are the company who are working officially with health minister. They do they database for health ministry. So this is they are very official.
A company only do the tool.
So
Nothing
they
else.
deliver the tool,
Yeah.
we deploy it.
Yes, and
Yes.
nothing else.
And we'll never automate the examination, luckily. We'll still be able to examine our patients. So clinical practice is still important.
Okay. We can have Andrea Cortese to sum up 2 minutes, and then he will be the rapporteur for the plenary
Yeah.
session anyhow.
I mean,
So please, Andrea.
Very briefly, because you were all here. So basically, and we need coffee. So it was an interesting session about registries, and really the first question that Jean-Antoine, Jean-Christophe is trying to address is why we need a registry. Multiple reasons and multiple type of registries, from identifying patients, record and capture the prevalence of the disease, trying to have information about genotype and phenotype, the natural history can be coupled with biomarkers. We want to identify patients for trials, but also potentially monitor response to treatment and identify differences across countries in Europe and outside. So there's an example of a compulsory registry to register in France patients with rare diseases, I imagine, for diagnostic and clinical management purposes. I know that we also have one in Italy.